this computer. Okay.
Recall.
Okay. Let me get going over here. Okay. Okay, for our radio audience, can you tell them who you are, where you are, and the dream that you have for your art?
My name's Danny. This project is called Amigo the Devil. It started as a solo thing. It's about 12 years ago, 13 years ago. Feels like a lifetime. And recently we started adding kind of other players, full band kind of thing. But fortunately, I am in a recording studio that we just built. And it's, in my opinion, that's the biggest dream I could have ever had beyond, shows, beyond anything like that. Just the ability to have a controlled space for myself that I can wake up and just come write songs in. It's been surreal to watch it play out, and it's still not done. There's a couple little things we have to patch up and work on, but for the most part, walls are here, stuff is up.
I see at least 4 skulls in the recording studio behind you. Are there more that I'm not seeing?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's about 9 in that cubby.
9 skulls.
Yeah. There's a lot of I've been collecting a lot my whole life. Not just skulls, a lot of things. And the studio is kind of a little home for all of it, like a mini museum of my hoarding. So it's been fun. I think that's been the hardest part, is putting up all the decor, to be honest.
When you get up in the morning, do you try to make a point of having a creative practice where, maybe it's journaling, maybe it's sort of getting out your guitar, your banjo, and just putting something down almost to cleanse your mind or to like put something into the world? Or is it just are you waiting for the lightning to strike?
Yeah, I'm a waiter. I'm definitely procrastinator for the most part, and I am writing all the time. That's something that just, I don't know if it's like a neurosis or if it's just a pleasant escape from the world, but I don't have a schedule to write on. Like, I know, some people wake up and write a song before they start their day.
Right.
I just can't do it, because I've realized anytime I force myself to write, it comes off that way. It feels very forced. It feels like I am trying to control some creative process.
Yeah.
And it's worked in the past to some degree, but those are usually the songs that I end up kind of losing my passion for and losing my interest and hope in, because it doesn't feel real. It feels like what it was. It was created. You know what I mean? When you're just kind of following whatever guide comes down and says, just write this down, that feels a lot more natural. That feels a lot more put together. So,
Well, congrats on the new record, Yours Until the War Is Over. I've been really digging it. It's funny listening to this record on full volume with my 2-year-old running around, because she has no idea what you're saying, but she's like into the kind of like energy that's going on. I feel like 2-year-olds have a lot of moody moments. I think that's maybe why she's so obsessed with Elsa from Frozen, like every little girl in the entire world. It's like Elsa from Frozen is actually like almost like the villain. Like she's like dangerous. She's like killing people with her like ice hands, you
the
know?
Frozen soundtrack is also amazing.
It
Like,
is
from a song,
amazing. But I had never seen it ever until like maybe a couple months ago, and I was like, I guess I'll have to like dive into this rabbit hole with the rest of the little kids now. And the fact that they're so in love with her as this main character, as this anti-hero, almost like villain who is has to go out into the middle of the woods and separate herself from humanity so she doesn't kill everyone. That's the hero all these little girls are into. I was like, wow, that is fascinating from a psychological standpoint. And not saying that yours until the war is over has anything to do with Frozen, but I feel like there's this really interesting thread about how um, the cannibal within all of us is always lurking beneath the surface. You know, like it's always lurking beneath the surface in that we kill ourselves from the sins of our genetics, sins of our
Yeah.
addiction, of our needs and
Oh, yeah.
wants and passions. And, um,
Doubt.
obviously there's a scourge of fentanyl addiction and people getting lost in communities across this country. Um, there's a lot to cover on this record, but I feel like do you is that sort of um self-sacrifice disease like almost like the is that sort of a seed that was waiting to blossom in this record?
I think I've touched on it in other records, and it was just time to kind of dive in wholeheartedly into that theme where when I started writing these songs and I started kind of processing that there may be, I don't want to say a central theme, but there is a thread that weaves through the entire, not storyline, but it does connect. It connects subconsciously, right? That wasn't on purpose. It wasn't really setting out to create this concept album of any sort, and I wouldn't call it that. But as I was writing the songs, I did realize, oh, this is just another side of that story. This is another emotion attached to that doubt, to that uncertainty, to that dispassion, if you will, just complete disassociation from self-preservation, that kind of mood. And some of the songs were more representative of that disassociation as a freedom, while other ones like Cannibal Within were about if you find too much freedom in that, you're toast, you're done. You're getting sucked in the little vortex of losing the wonder of life, essentially. That's kind of, in my opinion, where a lot of this record headed, was trying to realize how many things we allow ourselves to believe that take away the wonder of life.
Mm.
So at the end of it, even though there isn't a song that wraps it up like that, it was very much an exploration of what are the aspects in my personal life that are taking away the joy of it.
Well,
And I,
yeah, keep going.
well, I was going to say, I wouldn't say that it was an easy dive. It was,
Yeah, that was a pleasant swim.
yeah, it was fun. It was fun to write, and it was rewarding, and maybe a little selfish, but I'm glad those songs came out the way they did.
Well, murder ballads, songs that cover the darkest points in our humanity, right? There is like a cleansing feeling we get from singing them, from listening to them. I remember, when I was probably, I don't know, 11 or 12, and that Johnny Cash, um, Rick Rubin collection came out, and he obviously did Hurt, but he also had that song he did many years earlier in the 60s, I think, called Delia,
Yeah.
Delia, my Delia. He hears like the sound of her feet, like walking past him, like as a ghost when he's in jail because he murdered her. just like the thrill of that. It's like obviously you love horror films, you
Right.
collect a lot of you know, serial killer memorabilia. There is this sort of thrill that we get almost peeking through the curtain to the other side, you know, like the upside down, as they maybe call it in TV talk these days. That we're sort of stuck in our little you know, everyday life where it's like you got to pay your taxes and you go to work and you come home. And then there's also underneath your floorboards a lot of secrets that maybe the
Heartbeat.
people who lived there before you left behind.
Mhm.
That opening track, Hanging by the Roots, you know, I love that line that you know, the sycamore keeps growing as we water it with blood, holds all the secrets that we bury in the mud, you know, all these societies and sort of families that came before us, they're all hiding their layers of secrets.
Yeah.
Why did you want to open the record with that song specifically?
That was the last song that was written for the record, and it wasn't supposed to be on it. We had a different track chosen for it, and it didn't make sense in the actual lineup, essentially. So I sat down, and I remember I was exhausted. We were so far down the rabbit hole of recording and almost done. And we put a lot of work into it. We were dead. Like the three of us were dead. We hadn't slept much for like a month. And I sat down and just remember putting it out into the world. I was like, I just need one more song. I just need one more song for this record. And I started thinking about my grandfather. And I do want to say this, that song isn't about my grandfather, but thinking about my grandpa did kind of spark it in terms of how much I'm kind of becoming the person that he was, not necessarily in positive ways.
Mm,
I keep finding a lot of the same control that he tried to have throughout his life. He was a very controlled person,
mm,
and I think he treated people around him in that way of just needing to be the person in control. And that spiraled into a whole lot of other aspects. And ultimately, it was his demise. You know, ultimately, it is what caused the last 6, 7 years of his life to be terrible. He wasn't a terrible person. He just didn't know how to trust other people. He didn't know how to let go
mm,
of that need to just dig his claws into everything and have full control over it. And that's one small aspect of what led me to the song. But I remember playing the little acoustic part of the dun 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 dun, and I just imagined what it would be like to have the opposite, which is just complete lack of control, complete lack of any, I don't want to say dignity, but just any level of compassion towards life itself, not towards people. And it was just wild to think about how many subconscious elements of ourselves come from our lineage.
mm-hmm,
There's things that are built inside of us genetically, and that if I didn't make an active effort to change what was instilled in me from my
mm,
surrounding, hanging by the roots, like your demise will be what you're grown from and what holds you grounded to a lineage, to a bloodline, to anything that you've grown up around. That includes friend groups, that includes expectations when you're young. And then as soon as that song was done, it immediately reorganized the entire track listing.
mm-hmm.
because the record was going to start with this song called Agnes. And after that song was born, it just didn't make sense.
Right, because you mentioned basically that the sort of the theme or the title of the record in Agnes, which is sort of this almost interesting interlude song. I'm yours until the war is done. I'm yours till the morning. The same likely story when you wake up. I feel like there's that study that keeps coming around every few years of like whether or not we have free will or whether or not we are
Yeah.
the result of our great grandparents making it through famine in Ireland or something, like that you can see all these scars from previous generations that the youngest generation has to then make a break from, like you are not your grandfather, but there's also parts of you that you don't know even know why
Mhm.
you feel and act and talk and breathe and see things like your grandfather. Did you have a relationship with him that was important?
No, that's kind of the weird part is I never had a bad relationship with any of my family members, but I also didn't have an association to them, and no one did anything to me.
Uh-huh.
Also didn't ever make any effort to understand any of my life choices at all. So it was a lot of just criticism, and same with everybody. It's not a woe is me thing. It's not. That's I feel like that's the lowest form of family problems you can have. Like I got very lucky in that aspect. And I separated myself pretty early on. My mom and my sister are the two people I grew up around, and we would go visit family all the time. It just, as I got older, I lost interest in putting up with things that I didn't really want to be around to be judged by. And again, not traumatic. I'm not saying that I had family trauma by any means. They're great people. They're just not anyone that I associated with in my plan for life. And then the older I get, the more I realize that doesn't really matter either. I should have been there for them a lot more.
Well, sometimes
Um,
your family is not your community. It's not like the people that you are drawn to that actually understand you, you know,
yeah.
and that can be painful for sure. I mean, I know, you basically got kicked out of school, when you were what, 12, 13, and then you had to kind of bounce around, you know, it's like you seeing that first kid who's wearing the white zombie shirt. It's like you got to connect with someone who's like, wait, is this my family? Are
Yeah.
these my people?
Yeah.
Which is pretty
And,
young. I mean, to feel that, but like sometimes like you don't know sort of where you belong until you see someone else who's just as weird and out there as you, you know? You can be weird together. That's like the best part of making music for me is like, hey, someone understands
yeah, absolutely.
these visions that I have that no one else can see.
I think what I'm starting to realize, like if I saw somebody in my position back then, I think what I've learned at this point is that while growing up, we look for this complete inclusivity into our brain, our understanding, our world. So we find friends and communities that we either want to be fully immersed in, or communities that we can identify with and fully immerse ourselves within. But nothing has to be an absolute. I wish that I would have known that I can have my friends, my communities, my whatever shock, but alternative lifestyles, whatever you want to call it. I don't, they're all words. But I could have still learned from my family, whether positive or negative. I could have done a better job at separating that absolute immersion to still be close to people that weren't horrible. They just didn't understand me. They're good people.
Well, maybe
Just didn't understand.
it takes maybe decades as a creative person to process sort of the relationships that you had, when you were a kid. Maybe you're just sort of able to process that now. I mean, I just recently started going to therapy again for the first time in a long time, and this therapist like is trying to like get to know me in the first section. It's like, all right, let's cover the whole trajectory of your life, basically.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, so your mom, good, bad? It's like, wow, no one's ever like phrased it like that. Like, I feel like it's pretty good, but like, I don't know how she feels all the time about it. She's maybe like disappointed that I'm not like doing better in life or something.
It's just such a weird dynamic to look at somebody when you're young and you go, well, that's not what I want to be. So I'm not going to learn from this person because it's not what I
Right.
want to. And then as I slowly become those people, I realize if I had just set my own selfish needs aside, and if I hadn't felt so judged, and if I had been more secure in myself at the time,
Right.
I think it would have been a lot easier to just tell myself, well, they don't like this, they don't get it. Who cares? Doesn't matter. It's my thing. And then learn from them all the parts of life that I didn't get. I think that's the biggest hiccup that I had was I lost interest in learning any aspects of life that I didn't care about.
Right.
And now I'm realizing how important those aspects are because that's where the subconscious actually grows rather than just your conscious decisions. If I had asked my grandpa more questions about his life while he was alive, I might have more answers as to why I feel the way I do a lot of times. And then I could, instead of taking on those qualities that were built into my being, I could understand them a little better and know how to work around them. And it's all betterment. Like knowledge is never bad. Knowledge is never a negative thing as long as you use it within logic
Right.
to do good rather than, like learning how to hurt people is probably bad knowledge, but if you if you learn it and then know not to do it, that's good. So it's all about how you apply what you learn.
Well, there's a song on this record, The Mechanic, that reminds me of sort of everyone who has that unshakable savior syndrome, or like, the idea that I'm gonna find this person and I'm gonna fix them, even if they don't need
Yeah.
me to fix them. Um, and I think there's a selfishness, sometimes in the savior complex, because you feel like, oh, if I heal this wounded person, that makes me a better person.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But you like you have the need, this like this very selfish need to like, oh, you're the hurt one, not me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm okay. That makes me the savior. you know?
That's one of the examples of the songs that I started realizing had to some degree a counterpart. A lot of the songs on this record have counterparts. They
Uh-huh.
weren't written that way on purpose. It was very accidental. But when you look at the mechanic and then you look at Stray Dog is essentially not a genuine story arc, but in theory, it is essentially the viewpoint of the person being fixed in the mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the mechanic, you have somebody being like, "Don't worry, I got you. I'm like, I know you weren't broken. I just needed someone to fix." Right? That's one
Yeah.
side. The other side in Stray Dog is, and while I watch you try to fix me, I let you because I'm only trying to give you the purpose you need or
Yeah.
whatever. And it's just the counterpart of the other side of being like, you can pretend you're fixing me if you need that to be the case, but in all your judgment of me, I'm technically the person who's doing better, not economically, not socially, but emotionally. People that don't understand someone else's freedom of self tend to be the harshest judges of it. And that's where I wish I had that confidence when I was younger of realizing it's like the bless your heart thing, you know. While they were all trying to set me on a better path and get me to have a real career and all that, I was having a really good time.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have been hard for me to just say, yeah, fuck it, you can try to fix me. Do what you need. Like whatever you need, just do it because I'm confident in myself. Maybe I'll learn something from it, maybe I won't. But it might also just be a good time hanging out together.
You described being on the road for what, close to 7, 8 years without really getting much response besides, a lot of negativity, heckling, a lot of people doubting sort of why you should be there, what exactly you were playing, combining folk music and sort of the death metal aesthetic. I don't think people maybe were ready for it. It didn't know what it was about. And I think now it makes total sense. And maybe it always made total sense in that you had a lot of those old folk singers, those Carter family songs, they're pretty dark, a lot of them. It's like you grew up singing these almost as hymns as kids, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
And you know, You Are My Sunshine. It's like we're singing that to these little kids at daycare. Is anyone
Yeah,
listening to the words?
it's
Like
so brutal.
it's like suicidal.
It's so brutal. It's I always wonder because as you build new memories, you start to forget old ones, and I always wonder why I kept doing it because I don't really have an answer. I don't really want to say that it's because I had a strong constitution and all that, blah blah. It's not what it is. There's a bit of stubbornness for sure, but I think at the end of the day, through all the heckling, through all the problems, through the amount of people that did take it as their own punchline, there were a handful that didn't.
Yeah.
There were
Some
a
people
handful of,
understood.
and there were the handful of people that understood it to a level that it felt so communal and it felt beautiful, regardless of what was happening with the rest. It was those people that got me through it. It wasn't. I'm not saying it was for those people. It was because of them that I was
Hmm.
able to kind of keep going, and I'm really grateful for them. It was a crazy thing to process recently, and a lot of those people still come around. They're good friends now. I've built some really cool friendships based on the low points of my life. A
I
lot
mean,
of
in
my
a
best
way,
from that,
in
from just terrible moments.
I mean, in a way, probably your most listened to song, Hell and You, from that Volume 1 record collection. It's like sort of taking us into those moments where you're at the bar, you're trying to like learn like who you are and if anyone's gonna like be there for it. You know, Smell the vinegar stains, like
Uh-huh.
all those bars where we're like, wait, I'm barely getting paid. I drove 10 hours to
Yeah.
be here. Like every band or artist I think should go through some of those years like in your 20s. you know like I'm thankful that my group Dust Bowl Revival, we did those things where we slept on the floor for
Oh
six
yeah.
five 6 years, and you didn't know any different. It was like we were just like thrilled that someone would put us on the stage.
Yeah, you're walking away with $30 in your pocket, and you're like, whatever. Like, who cares? And like, here's the funny thing though. I talk about this with the band all the time because a lot of the dudes in the band now they came from either noise rock or metal or whatever it is, and I can't go back to those years. Like if I had to
Yeah.
start over, couldn't do it.
Yeah. I mean,
I,
it's too
it
hard.
makes me sound bougie now, but it's not even that. It's just having a reference to how abnormal that really is and how exhausting it really is, and losing that muscle for tolerance.
Yeah.
I could never do that again.
Well, I think the other thing though is that when you get older, right, and you start to have not standards, or you have like, this is where I'm supposed to be as an artist, as a human, right? Like I need uh a green room with some water and maybe some beer. It always makes me laugh when you go to like a nice venue. I remember we played this pretty like well-known theater in Denver. And the night before in Fort Collins was like this beautiful kind of like performing arts center place, which you expect those places to be cushy. Mostly old people are buying the subscription tickets. All right, we're playing the more rockin' night. Place was, full of people having a great time. And they basically had no backstage. And they're like, "Oh, do you guys need some water, or are you guys good?" It was
Like,
like, "Wait,
no, we
what?"
just store pouches in ourselves, and we're camels. Like we don't hydrate. We don't need anything
Also, it's
else.
like we're it's at altitude, right? We're like hyperventilating as, LA, sea level people. We're like, so you didn't think that maybe like just some water would be a good idea to have backstage? Like, why
No,
do people like some like venues sometimes they act so like mean spirited towards the artists that actually provide them the reason for being? I just don't get it.
I don't understand anybody in the live music industry being. I understand people being jaded. I get that, but
Yeah.
I feel like jaded doesn't mean you have to be mean.
Yeah.
And you're right. There are so many bitter people, which same rate. There's also so many kind people, so many loving people. Like there's so many. I'm sure you have your favorite venues that you just can't wait to see the crew there. There's a lot of venues that we walk into, and I'm like, I get to see X, Y, and Z, and
Right.
grateful to see them again. But then, God, it's usually those old guys. Old guys are just so hateful.
Well, because they felt like they should have been somewhere else. Like everyone's trying to go to somewhere else that they haven't quite gotten there. And here they are with you in this space. Um, is there a gig in those tough years where you either felt like you might die, like it was like this is an absolutely scary, crazy situation?
Yeah, a lot, quite a few of them actually. There were some. There was a lot of like squat houses and like backyard shows and things like that where I don't know if it was because it was scary or just because of the people that I was involved with in a lot of ways at the time were just attracting a much more unruly
Right.
bunch. And it was never about the show. None of the moments were ever about the show. It was always personal drama between people at the squad houses or situations that we weren't aware of that were happening in the moment that escalated into moments where I was like, yeah, this show's probably the last one we're gonna do. this is
Yeah,
this is this is
that's a wrap.
devolving to a very dangerous situation that somebody in our group, and to be fair, a lot of those weren't even with Amigo. A lot of those were when I was much younger. On the Amigo front, even the sketchy house parties we would play in the beginning were usually pretty friendly. We're usually pretty based on having a good time. And at that point, the sketchy part was getting too drunk or doing too many drugs or whatever it was. But it was all based on having a good time. And luckily that doesn't happen anymore. But they were
When
good years, good years.
when you have an audience that shows up to sing these songs with you, because you have a very vocal and at times rowdy crowd.
Yeah.
I've seen you in action a few times here and there. And when you have a crowd shouting at the top of their lungs the words to "I hope your husband dies," do you feel like you are helping them through some sort of personal catharsis? Like, or is it like, wait, should we have the riot gear ready? And maybe that fine line is what makes it so exciting. Like we don't know if this is going to go off the rails.
No, I wouldn't say that we've ever had like the Limp Bizkit of Woodstock 99 vibe, you
Yeah.
know. It's more of I wouldn't say the processing thing either. Like I'm sure some people are getting a lot of catharsis from yelling, whatever it is. For the most part, I think it's just people realizing that we're not alone in these sentiments, and then just becoming this big old ball of singular energy that gets to be bigger than ourselves.
Right.
And that goes both ways. For me, that is a very special feeling because it's surreal, and it's a funny phrase to yell within the context of the song. I wouldn't yell it at like Kmart, but
Yeah.
um,
But there is something I think that
there's
as an
catharsis.
audience member where it's like I would never say that out loud normally, right? Like we all have that person in our lives where we're like, man, they just rub me the wrong way. Everything they do drives me insane. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna think it, but I'm not gonna say it. Maybe I'll say it at this show though.
Yeah, I think it's that concept of we all know what it means to us, and I'm sure somebody means it with their chest, but for the most part, I would like to think that it's just a level of understanding that everybody in that room knows. Okay, this is a thing we wouldn't mention to people in the real world, but
Right.
here we understand what it is. We understand what it means. We understand the subcontext of it. And to me, that's where that level of catharsis comes in, where it feels like we're actually listening to each other as
Hmm.
opposed to us playing at them. And that connection is what I live for. I love that. I love that more than playing shows. I just love looking out and realizing we're on the same page here. We got this. We're good. Yeah, it's fun.
Well, I think the line that I think most connects with me on this record, maybe the part in "It's All Gone" where you say the only death that's ever really worthless is a life without a story to tell, right? So many people go through these Shakespearean dramas in their life, but they don't have any way of telling the story, or
Yeah.
they keep it sort of within sort of it's like all hidden behind closed doors. Not saying that everyone should be a singer songwriter, but it's like up to us as songwriters to tell the stories that maybe are festering in dark rooms. It's All Gone is you're almost singing in that Tom Waits
Yeah,
croak.
very much
It's like
so.
definitely like you embodying this persona maybe more than a lot of those other songs. I mean, you're practically like shouting, like that hook, it's all gone, you know, because
It felt very. I did that as a joke at first
uh-huh.
for that chorus, and I was joking about how Tom Waitsy that song was, and I'm very obviously heavily influenced by Tom Waits. Um, and then when I did it, I was like, that feels kind of good. Like that feels really good to do. That just feels. It felt good to do. It didn't even matter how it sounded. And so we just did it, went for it. I decided, fuck it, let's just go for it. Um, but yeah, there's if you think about how many people are on this earth and how many people, first of all, I don't want to shame anybody for deciding to live their life however they want to. Some people don't want these adventures. Some people don't want a grand, Gonzo-esque story to their life. But since it doesn't make sense to me, it kind of got to a point where I was processing, like, even if I do get to wherever the end of my life is, young or old,
Mm-hmm.
even with all these stories, even with these experiences that I've had, even with everything, it really does just kind of move on to the next one. It is gone. And the only real afterlife we have on earth is, legacy. And that legacy doesn't have to be popularity or fame or legend itself. Like, you don't have to be a mythical person to a community to be important to it, but I just think that it does apply in so many aspects of, are you a good person to the
Mm-hmm.
people around you? Are you trying to be there for your community? Are you trying to be there for your friends and all that? Or are you just trying to live an internalized life that will lead to that nothingness? Both options are right if that's what you want. But at the end, it just all goes away anyway.
Well, that's the, maybe the Shakespearean connection between the living man holding Yorick's skull, right? One day I'm going to be the skull that someone is holding, right?
Absolutely.
And, like you have in that song, It's All Gone, right? The captain of the ship and the cannibal, they're
Mhm.
civilized until the ship is about to go down and they need something to eat, you know?
Yeah.
And it is amazing to me how we got through or are still getting through that pandemic societal shutdown, honestly, in pretty okay shape, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Better
like
than I thought.
we do adapt as humans in a very impressive way, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's a miracle that most little things can function on a day-to-day basis. The bus driver is somehow going to come to work at 5 a.m. and pick you up, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be people who are working at the bank every day and they're not going to steal all your money most of the time, you know? Like somehow everyone has agreed to play these roles in this like
Yeah.
pretend, like we're going to believe that this piece of paper represents the thing that I did all day at work or something. Like we're playing this like game and we're like okay with it most of the time, though it's really bad for a lot of people, and then but you also understand like when people rise up and start to protest and you know when there's riots in the streets, you're like some people are, how could they do that, like protest and that stuff is it comes from desperation, you know?
Yeah.
Like the fact that people don't understand why these migrants are almost killing themselves for thousands of miles to bring their family into this country. Like, how dare they do that? It's like if you had a little kid and you're being literally almost killed every day in your hometown in Honduras or whatever, like, so you wouldn't try to escape to a better life? Like, no one puts themselves in the other people's shoes in
Don't.
some of these discussions. It's like you would be as desperate as them.
Yes. And honestly, it, to take that even a step further is just how comfortable do you have to be to have that little empathy? What level of absolute dissatisfaction for anyone else's life but your own do you have to not even stop and consider that there may be a reason you don't understand that it's happening? And at that point, like, where's your humanity? People talk about so many aspects of other people's lives that they don't get and they'll never be involved in. But I'm going to respect the parent who is trying to give their family a better life by any means necessary, more than somebody who's judging everyone else for just trying to do their best. It's insane what these families go through. And then to just be ridiculed and villainized. I don't know. I get disillusioned a lot with the state of things and the state of the world, and it breaks my heart that we have such little compassion for anyone else just because we were taught something else, or because
Yeah, I mean
it's the me
those.
before yours mentality that ruins everything.
Well, if we jump into that I'm going to heaven track, right? You could see the people who wrap themselves in sort of the God flag being like, well, I'm going to do whatever I need to do
Yeah,
to get through those pearly gates, even if there's a trail of blood behind me,
yeah,
because it's about me and my uh salvation.
yeah.
And even God won't get in my way.
It's insane. It's insane, but
I won't even
it
listen that Jesus was pretty like chill about a lot of stuff. He wasn't like he wasn't like, oh, screw the immigrants, like
is
don't help the poor people. Like literally the opposite of what Jesus said. Like, come on, guys.
100% a showboating mentality of, a lot of people think that I'm anti-religion or something. I'm really not. I'm a big fan of anybody finding whatever faith they need to be the best version of themselves. Always have been. I hate when people weaponize their faith as if their God, their structure, their belief told them it's okay to degrade or destroy someone else because of their faith. And it's like, just stop. Just stop. Let other people enjoy their own hope, their own force of betterment without weaponizing your own. Like, you don't have to use the guise of religion or God to decide that you hate a certain type of person because of it. It's just your faith should be your own, and it should be internal, and it should remain that way. The second it's a showboat, the second it's a tool, you're not believing in it anymore. You're not doing it right. You're not, like, you know, Stephanie Lambring has this one line is just sometimes Christians aren't too Christian.
You think?
And it's just so funny to hear people be so hateful in the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? What are you?
I used to love wearing that. I had that shirt years ago. It was like a picture of Jesus like wagging his finger saying he's like, I didn't say that. Did you ever think like even when you were a little kid that maybe there was a heaven, or that like your actions would keep you out of this more like safe afterlife? Because like we're,
Mm,
even as little kids who are not religious, I feel like you're kind of taught that if you're bad, something's gonna happen to you later on.
oh yeah, I mean, I was scared of, my mom's Latin. We come from Spanish, Greek, Latin background, all three kind of mixed in. And every aspect of that had religion at the base of some sentiment. So growing up, it was very much, we weren't hyper church people or anything, but it was just, there was God, there was heaven, there was hell. And nobody really forced it on me or anything. It's just what I believed existed because it's what was around me. So I was terrified of going to hell. That's when I was a kid, like a kid, like Santa
Right.
Claus. And once I started forming my own thoughts about it, I realized that I might believe in a higher power. I'm pretty sure I believe in a higher power of some sort. I don't know what to call it. I don't know what they are. And I don't know that hell, heaven, purgatory, or an afterlife are represented in any physical manner that we understand. So, like, heaven could just be a feeling,
Mm.
and whatever form we take after we die, maybe we just live in that feeling, but it isn't. Once I formed my own thoughts, I didn't believe it was a place with clouds and a gate.
Yeah.
I don't. There's a keeper of heaven. I just think that whatever ends up being God, if anything at all, I don't think that there's a physical representation of that form, that being. I don't believe that we didn't make up all these stories as just representatives for something that we don't understand.
Hmm.
I think we did. I'm pretty. That's what I believe. If you want the majority of people to understand something, you're gonna create a physical representation of it. Because how the hell do we explain abstract concepts to that many people?
Yeah.
You
I
just
mean, if you
well,
go to those, amazing cathedrals in Spain and Italy, it's like if I was in 1620 when there's literally no skyscrapers or any buildings above like one story, and then all of a sudden you're sitting in these insanely beautiful vaulted halls, I'd be like, sign me up. You know, Especially the music, the singing, the org, it's like what else could you think would be better than that? It's powerful.
think about back then, if you see something as powerful as a faith manifested into completely unreasonable human creations, you go all the way back. I mean, any religious structure, any spiritual structure that humanity has created based on faith doesn't even have to just be the cathedrals. Like any structure we've created for worship is the greatest achievement that we have made in those eras. And it's representative of how strong faith can be. Faith can make you create what shouldn't be feasible, right? And granted, you look at the history of a lot of those things, and maybe they didn't do it the best way, but they
Well,
were made.
they take advantage of your blind devotion, to this force. You're like, oh, now we got you. But when you were a kid, and I know you grew up in Miami, but like, was there a first record or set of songs that were like, wait a second, this is my religion. These are like my hymns. I feel, and that sometimes it's silly, but like for me, I mean, when like Green Day first came out, it was like, oh, this is like whatever I'm feeling and whatever I'm like into, this is it, you know? I would
God,
walk for like 10 miles and listen to the entire new record on my Discman
just over
until
and
it was
over and
done,
over.
you know?
I
It was
used
just
to,
like so exciting whenever that happened. He was like everything else stopped.
um, I I would say that, I loved music. I loved, I didn't have access to a lot of unique music in Miami until I found Uncle Sam's, and they usually had some weird stuff, or the older kids I was riding BMX with took me to shows and stuff like that. And I loved it. I loved the aspect of community, but it wasn't until I heard this is, I was probably 15, 16. I heard Godspeed You Black Emperor,
Hmm.
lift your swinging fists to the heavens like antennas, or whatever order that is. Um, I think that's the first record that changed my life.
Hmm.
That, and actually, funny enough, Thrice. Thrice was, I'm trying to remember the For Illusion of Safety. That wasn't really a genre of music I listened to, but for some reason that record hit home so hard. And those were later, like I was saying, 15-ish, whatever it was, 14, 15, 16. Godspeed was the first one that wrecked me. And I
Hmm.
mean, just emotionally destroyed every fiber of my being. That was the moment I realized that I worship music.
Hmm.
Before then, I worshiped the community of it. I loved the friends, the shows, the t-shirts, but I didn't really understand. Like me and my little buddies when we were, 8 and 9, like 10, listening to Corn, running
Yeah.
around being it's Green Day was a big one for me. One of my first dogs I named Green Day, German Shepherd. And it was one of my dad's dogs in Greece. And my dad was like, they're not German, Belgian Shepherd. Real
All
cute
right.
dog.
Let's say in a dream scenario, Amigo the Devil is asked to open on a leg of the Green Day 30th anniversary Dookie tour, which is coming up. What Green Day song would you cover to pay homage?
I feel like it'd be something off Nimrod. I'm going
Having trouble trying to sleep.
I'm going going through the track list. I'm trying to remember. It's been so
Brains
long.
isn't Brain Stew on that?
Brain Stew's on that. I'm pretty sure.
Oh my God, I
Brain
used to get
Stew would be a good one.
so pumped from that song for some reason.
Brain Stew was so good. I forgot how good. Hold on. I'm gonna look up this track listing real quick. I have to.
It's like talk about the most simple, just like was it three chords going down and then back up over and over again?
Uh,
Having trouble trying to sleep.
I'm looking. Yeah, that's a good. I love this question. I haven't listened to those records in so long. I have to.
Because I think like what they did, and I'm sure like a lot of true punk fans are like, well, they're pop sellout versions of punk rock. But it brought in people like me who's like, I'm
Oh,
not ever gonna fully go as hard as a lot of these punk records, like I
I think
loved
that
some Rancid and some No Effects and kind of stuff like that for a second there, but like I was always a little bit of a softer. I like the like points in the dynamic range when Green Day all of a sudden gets quiet and it's just the bass,
yeah,
like that's what was so powerful, that they used the dynamic range in like Longview. It's just the voice and the bass, and then they get big. Like,
Uh-oh.
I want to be able to hear what they're saying.
There was I don't know, there's this obsession with like once a band changes their sound or becomes more popular or just grows up and shifts into a different gear. People have this obsession with dismissing everything they did before that. And it's so unfair. I think Dookie was obviously what got most of
Yeah.
us into whatever it was. And all right, I'm looking at the track listing because I'm really, really, really curious about this now. I'm excited. Um See, like, man, I used to love Nice Guys Finish Last. I forgot about that song.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Damn, 97. That's crazy. Nah, I would do King for a Day. That's exactly what I would do.
All right.
King for a Day. Damn. That was my favorite one.
It was funny, like a couple months ago, me and the lady who sings harmonies with us sometimes, we did like a folk harmony version of Basket Case, and you're like, wait, this song like was meant to be sung in this folk style almost, you know? And that when Billy Joe did that record with Nora Jones, which a lot of people did not ever hear for some reason,
I didn't
of
hear that. I didn't know that.
they did a record called Foreverly, like all Everly Brothers songs.
Oh,
It is freaking incredible. Like him just singing like full on intricate like brother harmonies with Nora Jones.
it's
That's
incredible.
that album got like buried for some reason like 12 years ago.
You're taking a
And you're
field
like,
trip.
"Oh, this guy is basically like a folk singer who just also is in a punk rock band."
We'll put some electric stuff together. Now, I don't know what it was that I went through an era where I was like ashamed of a lot of the music I was listening to because the kids around me were so much cooler and
Right.
genre elitism things. So I hid a lot of those bands that I used to listen to when I was a kid. I was a kid. Like I'm grateful to have access to any of those bands at all because it led me to the weird elitist crap that I listen to now. Because let's be real, I'm the worst. I'm horrible. I'm elitist trash all the time.
But you've worked your way there. You've learned, you've gathered information. That's like at a certain point, like I think when you become more of an elder statesman, not like you're that old, but like, you know, you feel like you've been doing this for a while, right? So
Like
it's like you
touring is touring
you
makes you feel
have
old.
you have the right to be somewhat elitist at this point, I feel like, you know.
I try to not be, and I do love all types of music. Like I won't shit on pop music. I won't shit on anything really, even if I don't like it. Which I do love a lot of pop music. Like Olivia Rodrigo, one of my favorites.
Yeah, she's
I
great.
love Olivia Rodrigo. Um, One of the best shows I've ever seen recently, Bad Bunny, was amazing.
Yeah.
Bad Bunny was so good.
I think what I don't understand is the level of I don't quite understand the level of almost religious fervor for Taylor Swift. In that I don't like discredit what she's doing. I think she's been busting her ass since she was a teenager. I mean, her dad also like bought the record label that signed her, so it's not like a rags to riches situation. But like listening to this new Beyonce record, Cowboy Carter,
I haven't heard it yet.
oh my god, dude,
Is
you're
it
gonna
really
love
good?
it. It's like shockingly, it's not even shockingly good. It's just like, again, someone like me who's not normally gonna listen to these kind of pop star records. It's like a master class of genre busting awesomeness, you know? I mean, there's been some criticism maybe that she didn't bring enough sort of spotlight to black musicians in the folk and Americana worlds, and she's putting Post Malone and Miley Cyrus at the top of the whatever. But the songs are good. It's beautifully recorded, and when I listen to that and then I listen to Taylor Swift, that is sort of forced upon me. I'm just like, it feels like again graduate school over here and like the junior varsity over here, like lyrics and song craft wise. I just like I don't get it. I just don't like I don't get it.
Do you think there's somebody in your life when you were younger that you revered that highly that maybe made you believe that you could? Weird question. Like, I wonder how many times people see the Taylor Swift thing and they go, I could be exceptional. Like, it's this level of almost camaraderie or just hope where these younger people are finding themselves within somebody who is, I'm not going to say she's not good at what she does. She's great at what she does. I think there is a level of exceptionalism to anybody that has gotten to that level, right?
Yeah.
Even if I don't get it, which I I do enjoy it. I'm not gonna hate on her. I do agree that I don't understand the God complex of the fandom,
Yeah.
but I kind of don't understand that with anyone
Right.
in general. Um, do you think there was somebody in your life that was kind of like a Taylor Swift where you revered them as a god and everybody else was like, it's okay?
I feel like for some, white boy singer songwriters like me, like Bob Dylan is that god in a way, right? Like, when I was in college in Michigan and someone gave me the Blonde on Blonde double record, like I had this moment of just like, this is what I want to write. Like, this is it. Like, whatever that combination of pure off the rails storytelling with this sort of
Yeah.
bluesy weirdo folk back. He had the band obviously playing behind him, which I didn't even know at the time. But like, there's definitely people who have that like, when is Bob Dylan gonna be like shot down from his freaking pedestal already? Like enough with this dude. But at the same point, like his stuff for me is like in that almost Shakespeare level of it's not even his music for like what makes it so good. It's everyone else sort of continuing his songwriting. I mean, it's like, freaking Wagon Wheel is him. It's like it like keeps going. Like he's got his hooks in all these different fish
I think
and
that's
it's
what I
beautiful.
don't understand about the Taylor Swift thing is that again, I'm not digging on what she does. I'm not digging on the music. I'm not digging on the show. But I mean, it isn't changing music. It isn't
Will it
reformatting
last?
of it. And that's the part I don't understand how people latched onto that. Another example, I've said this example for a while. I've brought it up a few times now. Damn, this really did have an impact on me. We played a festival with Zach Bryan,
Uh-huh.
and I had heard some of the songs. I was like, cool, whatever. Like, it's nice, cool songs. And we were there, so I wanted to go see it. And the Trampled by Turtles guys had done some touring with him, so they brought me back with them. And I'm watching from the stage, and I could see everybody. And I don't know how many tens of thousands of people were there. But the second that that band started playing was a religious experience. for everybody in that crowd. They were singing so aggressively and so loudly. Every word. And it had nothing to do with the band being exceptional. It had nothing to do with anything other than the demeanor and the social contract that they had formed with that crowd.
Right.
And it was such a mind-altering experience because of how relatively new he is. I'm not saying new as in he's never done anything. I'm just saying new in terms of the history of, you know, the world of music.
Well, when it happens fast these days, right? I mean, it's like it just it's amazing. You see a guy like it was a Noah Khan or whatever, you know, like the guy was, you know, sort of he had signed like what a record deal when he was pretty young, and then nothing really happened, and then puts out Stick Season and starts doing well on TikTok. Now it's like the dude is headlining multiple days at Red Rocks, right? It's like it goes from like you couldn't fill a bar with 20 people to 2 nights headlining Red Rocks
20K, yeah.
within a year.
Without
You know,
people.
I mean, it really is amazing. I think it's also like it can feel heartbreaking as an artist that is toiling year after year to get 400 people to show up, maybe, right? And you're like,
we're doing our best. We're doing our best.
You're just like, can we get like 1,000 of those people to come over here?
But I don't know what it was about that specific show that I think that was the first time I understood that I've been looking at the Taylor Swift situation. Well, in a very, very antiquated way. Like I've been looking at that situation from the world of music I came from and the way that I did things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just such a new world out there within that realm that I finally understood. If I had been young in that crowd, I would be just sold forever, committed forever to finding that high again.
What's their church?
It's their church. And if I had an experience like that when I was younger, I would be, you know, and that's what I'm assuming people have when they go to those Taylor Swift shows, is not even the music itself or who she is, because you can mix and match marketing and talent and right place, right time. You can, whether it's a genius business or just a situational advantage, doesn't really matter anymore. Just the fact that somebody can bring together that many people to feel that good,
right?
That's special. And for all those people involved, that's special. So like, whether I understand it or not, who am I to say that to all of those people that are treating it like that God complex, that they didn't find something worth committing to, you know? And it's so funny that the common theme in this conversation has been like young and old, like getting older. I'm definitely finding myself in this midlife existential crisis mode.
Yeah.
Where I've reanalyzed everything.
Yeah.
I realize everything. And I'm finding out how many things I look at from the lens that I grew up looking through rather than whatever new lens is out now, like everything changes, everything grows. Am I going to get on TikTok and do funny stuff? No, I'm not. No one wants to see, middle-aged fat guy doing that.
I mean, some people probably do want to see it.
Actually, yeah, that's unfair to say. But, I'm just going to stay true to what it is we do, and just the same way you do. And and just continue being confused by things I don't get. Like I think that's the level of understanding that I'm finding. Also, I have found myself recently with younger bands and newer bands talking about, the struggle we had and the sleeping in cars and sleeping in squat houses and sleeping in cat shit, and you got to put in your work and blah 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 and
Yeah.
go through. I'm grateful I went through those years. They were hard as hell, but I'm grateful I did it. It also doesn't necessarily have to mean that everyone should struggle that way. I think it is character building, personally. Like for you and I do believe it's character building. I think you
Yeah.
mentioned that earlier. And do I believe it helps form a much more clear version of yourself? Possibly, yes. But at the same rate, I wonder, do we really want people to struggle? Like, do we? I don't know. Like, if kids found a way to not have to play shows for $30 and dive straight into a Sprinter van
Yeah.
with, you know, I remember getting my first $300-400 guarantee, and I was like, oh my god, I'm rich.
Yeah.
I'm rich. I could do this forever. And that was like,
Well, I think sleeping on floors and getting out there sort of without the world telling you that you should is how you like force the issue. You force people to listen to my story, right? And this again, this is before you could go viral maybe or something, have that lottery ticket punched. But like I always had that confidence, especially with our band with, the horn section and blah, blah, blah. It's like, hey, if we're in some room and you're there, you're going to fucking love this, you know?
yeah.
Now it's hard sometimes to get them to show up, but if they are, they're in, right?
That's the hard part for us was like, how do we fill this room? How do we get this room full?
It's still the issue. I mean, it's like, I think it never ends, that slog, but, I think the impulse to get out there and tell your story, there is a level of pure narcissism in it as well, right? It's like, no, you need to hear my songs, right? And
Yeah.
that's like that selfishness is, I think, part of it. It's like, no, I don't want to just play this for a couple friends in my living room. I want to play it at the Great American Music Hall for 400 people. That's what I want, you know? And I think that there is a certain level of there's also maybe a lack of shame that I think great performers have. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna go out there and kind of make a fool of myself. You're gonna jump up in the bar and scream, and people are gonna maybe be impressed, maybe appalled. Who knows? But I'm gonna do it because I need that connection. I need that
Yeah.
reaction. We're desperate. We're desperate for a reaction. You know?
I think I never even thought about it from that perspective. It just got me wondering, all those years, the character building that I'm talking about, the years of struggle. Do you believe that is what built the shamelessness for you?
No, I'm
Because
saying like our
yeah,
ability to withstand that is partially
yeah.
because there's a lack of shame, or that your lack of shame can sort of help you get through the hard times, right?
I think mine was maybe built on those years, because I don't think I started with that same confidence and
Right.
shamelessness. I think for me, I was very nervous at all times, and I learned through those hardships to be less fragile. But kids nowadays are just generally shameless. Like they're born shameless in a good way, not a bad way. Like in a very,
Well,
I
they're much
don't,
more on camera for their whole lives.
yeah, they just aren't really worried about looking stupid in a grocery store doing a little dance thing. And I
They
wish I
might
were.
they
I
might
wish I.
become a star from it. Who knows?
It's a crazy thing that I can't I can't ridicule simply because I don't understand it.
Yeah.
But I have to believe that, even though I personally do believe, and I will always stand by this, that social media as a social element and standard did ruin a lot of humanity's ability to understand each other. Um, I think that looking past social media itself, the presence of that shamelessness that they're kind of born with is actually really cool
Hmm.
when you think about what it implies otherwise. But it also does instill this lack of false confidence
Mm.
that I have seen. For example, if I have a really bad show,
Uh-huh.
whatever. It's whatever. Who cares? I've had a million of them. But I've seen some of the younger kids that got thrown into thousand cap venues,
Yeah.
you know, when they have a bad show, it's the end of the it's a miserable thing.
Yeah.
And I wish I knew how to tell them like it doesn't matter that much.
Well, I think
Because
that the lack of uh those, if you don't have the hardened skin a bit from building those calluses on your soul from those tougher years,
yeah.
the only way there is down if you start too big, right?
Yeah.
Because it's pretty hard to sustain 1,000 people coming to your shows all the time unless all of a sudden you become an even bigger and bigger and bigger star. Like, whereas if you start with 50 people coming and then 150 people come, it's pretty exciting, right? And then, oh, maybe 500 people come, you know? And, it's interesting that you start that song, The Cannibal Within, with, I didn't know that I'm neurotic. Like, you almost like, these songs are forcing you to look at yourself from all these different angles. Never thought I was scared of dying, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned in previous interviews that a lot of the kids that you grew up with in Miami who maybe didn't have an outlet or a path to sort of express themselves and to get out some of these demons, they're dead or in jail,
Yeah.
right? You
They're
think that
gone.
would be where you were if you didn't have music?
No. Maybe. No. Well, I should have died a lot of times. I've been very lucky. I, I should have been dead a couple times already. And I think that maybe lends itself to finding humor in darkness. I think I am a much more happy person than people who don't know me think I
Uh-huh.
am based on music. But if I didn't have music as an outlet, I think I would have found a different thing. Like I used to have BMX. BMX was my big one. And I only stopped doing that because my body, I broke my body too many times. Um, I don't think I'd be doing nearly as well emotionally or mentally as I am now. I think I'd be struggling a lot, but I don't think I would have gone down the same path a lot of my friends did. Because a lot of their deaths were like violent or attributed to other things. And the overdoses are probably the closest
Right.
thing to would have probably happened, but that's that would have been the case at all times. I think I got lucky with a lot of things. Damn, I don't know. These are good questions. You're making me think about myself a lot.
That's what we try to do here on the show on the road. Well, I'm so glad that you are, putting out this music because I think it's connecting with folks from a lot of different edges of the music spectrum, and normally I think again, like I necessarily wouldn't gravitate towards uh maybe this sort of murder folk idea, but for some reason, like right now, maybe maybe I'm in that sort of darker place in my life, having a lot of existential uh veering towards 40 who the hell am I questions. Um but also in a weird way, like my wife has gone through this thing where when my daughter was born, she developed this extremely rare syndrome that almost killed her, and that will continue to try to kill her unless she takes this insanely expensive drug, of which today, literally, her insurance tried to deny it again for whatever reason. Um, and I had that image of like it's like her body is almost like the cannibal within, like,
Yeah.
and she jokes so like, yeah, my body's trying to murder me again. And people are going through all sorts of different stuff, and your music is finding them, and I think that's where I am at right now with it, and it's awesome.
Well, that does make me happy to hear that the music um, finds itself however people need it to. Every once in a while, I do get sad, and it's not about me at all, but hearing the reasons that people do connect.
Right.
Sometimes I wish that they didn't have to, that they didn't have a reason to associate with it.
Yeah,
I
the
think
pain is
that's
there.
the only curse of these songs and this type of song is that I wish I wish that it wasn't going well because people were struggling.
Yeah, well,
That,
that's a real thing. Yeah. I mean,
and
when you collect these tokens that, are sort of from the serial killer universe, right? You have John Wayne Gacy paintings. You have a handprint, I think, from the cannibal Issei Sagawa. Like these are things that um, come from, again, that upside down world in a way, right? People who existed and hurt a lot of people, right? Or sort of laid waste through polite society, right? Um, I guess the question I always have of people who are obsessed with true crime or like all these murder podcasts, right? It's like, why does it make us feel good or feel sort of more secure in ourselves somehow to hear about other people being gruesomely murdered? It's a weird human um trait that it's there. I mean, you could see it all the time, right? Like
yeah,
people are drawn to these TV shows, these podcasts, these movies, right? Horror films. Like we have this need to be connected to the darker side of ourselves. Um, I love me some Law and Order SVU. Every hotel in every state in this country, there's always
24/7.
Olivia Benson on TV trying to solve who raped someone else in the subway, right? That stuff is scary and dark. And it's like, that's like comfort food for me. Like, why? Like, why is that comforting for me to watch?
My viewpoint on the true crime thing has changed so much over the years. It's still fascinating to me. I'm still intrigued by a lot of it for different reasons than it used to. I literally made a career out of, exploring the serial killer stuff and all that. And I remember one day I had a friend uh, come over to the house, and he had 5 kids, and he brought the kids over, and we were having a big barbecue. It was the first time they had come to the house, and naive me, was excited to be like, look at my collection of stuff.
Yeah.
And the house is kind of like a museum of a lot of different stuff, not just the serial killer things. And when we got to the room with all the serial killer things in it, he pointed out one of the Gacy paintings, and he was like, "Didn't that guy kill like a bunch of kids?"
Mm-hmm.
I was like, unfortunately, yeah. And I could see it in his face while his kids were upstairs playing, just like, well, like, why do you want that then? Like, why is
Yeah.
that? And I had never asked myself that question from that perspective, because in my mind, it was just this rarity of something I was intrigued by. And it was the
Mm.
closest I could come to what I was intrigued by. But as soon as he asked that, I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't actually know. I have no idea
Mm-hmm.
why I want this painting. It's definitely not because I glorify them. It's not
Mm-hmm.
because I think that anything they did was respectable or honorable. I think it's filth. But I think there is a level of, you know, understanding self-control, and the fact that we can't imagine ourselves crossing that line of cruelty. And to some degree, anything we don't really understand has to be fascinating
Mm.
unless we completely disregard it. And I feel like that's usually the two emotions attached to even horror movies. Like, there's people who had just have an absolute adversity to horror, and people who are drawn to it for whatever reason. But the more friends that I have take their own lives, and the more friends that I see struggle or lose their homes or lose their families, the more I've realized that the cruelty of humanity is so clear and present daily. It's so widespread. The cruelty of humanity is so easy that the serial killer thing doesn't seem so intense anymore.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like, they were singular monsters, but there are these huge, huge problems within our social temperature that
Right.
we don't know how to solve or address yet. And like, depression's a beast.
Yeah.
And depression is, the more we lose from it, the more we realize it's not an emotion. Like, depression's not just being sad. Depression is that cannibal within.
Mm.
It is a killer that we can't put in jail. Like, we can't sentence depression to death.
Yeah.
It's more terrifying than something physical. And at this point, those true crime documentaries and all that everybody is fascinated with, I think, for as gruesome as they are, I think it is still a break from reality for a lot of people. It is like hey, at least it wasn't me kind of thing.
Well,
Um,
it also is that I think was it the Buddhist um practice, if you think about your own death or your pending death 6 times a day, you actually feel more in the present and more alive. It's like like we don't ever want to face maybe our own demise, but if we see these other poor souls being lost, we're like, well, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Like it sort of makes our reason for being more valid or something, or more like um it makes us be in the present, and that little dark thrill that comes from folks singing at full volume with you, the cannibal within, it's all gone. It's like there is something thrilling about like we're here, we're in this community somehow. I don't know, how we all got here. That's my favorite thing about playing shows is that like my my cousin's second husband told me to come and I just decided to try it out, and now I'm like friends with like this accountant from New Jersey. It's like the people who show up at these shows and then end up being I'm like part of this weird new family is great. Last thing I'll ask you, and I'll let you go, is there a show, a festival, or a moment in the last, couple years where you felt like that heaven on earth actually could be real? Like that moment on stage where you're like, wait a second, this is it.
This is going to be such a random one. It was a show. Uh, Unexpected answer for me. It was on this last tour. We had a wonderful, wonderful tour with Flogging Molly. They're such great people. They're so fun, and they gave me hope that you can love doing this for your whole life. Like you don't have to become miserable. You don't have to lose your spark for it. On that tour, we played a lot of incredible venues, but the Albuquerque show. I only mention it because it was the most recent feeling I had.
Uh-huh.
Was that Albuquerque show was genuine magic. It made me believe in the magic of togetherness. And there was a vibrance in the room. There was so much life in the room, and
They were ready for it.
it made me understand what it might be like to aggressively believe in love for a god, right? It felt how I imagine that feels to love something that is intangible, that is just present with no explanation for it.
Yeah.
It was it was
Which
so
venue? Which venue was it in Albuquerque?
pretty sure it was El Rey. Yeah, El Rey.
Might have to go there.
All right. There was something about it. Just the people came, and there was an invisible. There was an invisible presence amongst everybody that I'll never understand. But it was so cool.
That's awesome, man.
Uh,
I mean, that's the reason why we do it, right? I mean, I think as many good or bad things that happen going forward, you're like, yeah, but Albuquerque, huh?
well, unexpected. That was an unexpected one. I
Sweet.
didn't. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're doing your thing, man, and we'll have to team up one of these days. I feel like Dust Bowl revivals with maybe on some festival with you guys coming up, but I forget which
I
one.
think are we doing Bourbon and Beyond?
I don't think we're on that one this time, but that we did that once. It was pretty epic.
There is something. I know we're on something together. We should do something together though. I
Yeah,
do love
man.
what you
I
do.
I, I appreciate what you do, and it's funny that the guy, one of the founders of Flogging Molly, I don't think he plays with them anymore. This guy named Ted Hutt.
Mm.
He's the guy who like produced a couple of our records, and he's just like this sort of gentle British guy who are like, wait, so you one of the main guys who started Flogging Molly, and he produces like Dropkick Murphys and a lot of folks like that. And the stuff that we thought like, oh, like some of our hard hitting, like really dark big songs he's gonna be into, and he was like really actually into the like soft folky ones.
Yeah.
He's like, no, this one is actually even more hard hitting. You just don't even know it. And we're like, oh shit, all right. He was right. He was right.
I love that. I love that. Well, dude, thank you for your time. I
Yeah,
appreciate you
man.
listening. Well, I do
Yeah, man. Keep
ramble.
up.
Sorry.
Oh, keep up the good work, man. We'll see each other one of these days.
Oh yeah, I hope so.
All right, bud.
Have a
Later.
good one. Take care.